Hello, my name is Sheila Corona. Welcome to Sassy Seer Sheila and New Light Streaming Love, as this will be seen on both channels. This is The Code Carriers by Jason Gray, written today, June 30th, 2026, the second of the two that Jason asked me specifically to record. However, as I indicated in my last recording, the first transmission, had already seen this. I had already known that I was going to be recording it today when Jason asked me to do so. So that's very interesting to me in and of itself. So without further ado, the code carriers. The living receivers of the first transmission. Archive designation TRN-phi symbol. I believe that's what that is. /carrier class -01. Every civilization across every spiral arm of the galaxy and every epoch of deep space-time eventually turned its gaze outward in search of the source of the transmission. They scanned ancient pulsars for rhythmic anomalies. They mapped the violent births and deaths of quasars. They listened to the death throes of collapsing stars and the faint whispers of cosmic microwave background radiation, the lingering echo of the universe's violent birth. They constructed observatories the size of continents, orbital arrays spanning solar systems, and receivers so sensitive they could detect the quantum vibration of individual atoms across interstellar voids. They found frequencies layered upon frequencies. They found particles dancing in impossible symmetries. They found mathematics that seemed to predate matter itself. They found astonishing, heartbreaking beauty encoded in the fabric of reality. They never found the transmitter. They were searching in the wrong direction. The transmission did not originate from a point in space. It did not travel from a distant star or a hidden dimension. It originated through someone, through living minds embedded within the civilizations themselves. Not an individual chosen by destiny, not a species granted special favor, a recurring phenomenon. The oldest archives etched into crystal lattices and preserved in quantum memory vaults referred to them with austere simplicity. The code carriers. They did not own the transmission. They did not invent it. They did not control it. They simply carried it, alive, imperfect, and often unaware of the full weight passing through them. Every civilization imagined the carrier would be extraordinary. Every radiant king seated upon a throne of light. No, sorry. Every civilization imagined the carrier would be extraordinary. A radiant king sitting upon a throne of light. A prophet descending from a mountain with tablets of fire. A transcendent scientist unveiling the final equation. A supreme ruler or military commander whose name would echo through eternity. History, as it turned out, had it precisely backwards. The carrier was almost always invisible by design, a quiet mechanic repairing engines in a dusty outpost, a farmer watching the slow turning of seasons in soil that had fed generations, a prisoner serving an unjust sentence in a forgotten cell, a librarian tattling forgotten texts in the quiet hours after closing, an artist whose sketches captured something words could not name, a nurse tending to the dying with hands that somehow conveyed more comfort than medicine alone, a crane operator lifting beams of steel towards the sky, wishing for the freedom of truly following their dreams, a writer whose words traveled farther than their body ever could, seeding thoughts across continents or centuries. The transmission deliberately avoided positions of concentrated power. Power distorted the decode. Fame amplified the ego until it drowned out the signal. Authority invited interference, manipulation, and institutional capture. The carrier, therefore, emerged wherever coherence could still survive, on the margins, in the ordinary, in places where the noise of civilization had not yet become total. Not prestige, not pedigree, only presence. No civilization ever manufactured a carrier through deliberate engineering. They appeared naturally, unpredictably, like rare atmospheric phenomena that no model could fully forecast. They did not appear through genetics alone, although certain lineages showed a higher incidence. They did not appear through raw intelligence, though many possessed formidable minds. They did not appear through formal education, which often proved more hindrance than help. A carrier emerged when an individual became structurally compatible with the transmission. Compatibility was a matter of inner architecture. Their perception became unusually flexible, able to bend without breaking, and able to hold multiple contradictory truths in suspension. Their curiosity remained alive and childlike long after the weight of certainty had settled over others like sediment. They tolerated paradox without the compulsive need to resolve it immediately. They noticed subtle patterns others dismissed as coincidence or noise. They retained the capacity for profound stillness amid civilizations addicted to unrelenting noise, frantic motion, endless distraction, and perpetual urgency. Their greatest characteristic was not what they believed, but what they could remain open to observing without premature judgment. The archives called this state adaptive coherence, a dynamic equilibrium between structure and receptivity, between knowing and unknowing. The first sign was almost impossible to measure with any instrument. Ideas began arriving differently, not necessarily faster, but more complete, whole constellations of insight appearing at once rather than piecemeal. Connections emerged between domains that conventional education insisted were unrelated or even opposed. Physics echoed the metaphors of ancient mythology. Music revealed the hidden architecture of mathematics. Biology reflected the elegant symmetries of geometry. Language concealed principles of engineering and information flow. Dreams occasionally solved equations that waking minds had labored over for years. Stories preserved fragments of forgotten technology or ethical frameworks long discarded. The carrier did not invent these relationships. They simply noticed them with a clarity that felt strangely inevitable. To everyone else, these insights appeared imaginative, poetic, or even eccentric. To the carrier, they felt like memory arriving before experience, like remembering a place they had never visited or recognizing a melody never heard before. Every civilization misunderstood them in its own way. Pardon me. Some carriers were celebrated and elevated to near mythic status, their words eventually twisted into dogma. Most were quietly ignored, allowed to live their unremarkable lives while the signal continued its subtle work. Many were also feared, exiled, or eliminated, not for what they said, but for the unsettling questions their mere presence provoked. The carrier possessed something every stable system instinctively resisted: unscripted emergence. Systems survive by prediction. Prediction requires repetition. Repetition requires stability. A genuine carrier could not be reliably predicted or controlled. They introduced novelty, not chaotic randomness, but organizing novelty, the kind capable of slowly, inexorably restructuring entire civilizations from within. This made them extraordinarily dangerous, not because they sought revolution or power. Most never did. Many lived and died without ever fully understanding their role. The danger arose simply from their existence. A single coherent transmission passing cleanly through one transparent mind could cause thousands or millions of disconnected minds to begin asking better questions. Better questions generated sharper observations. New observations reorganized perception. Reorganized perception reshaped culture. Reshaped culture eventually reshaped civilization itself. The carrier rarely changed the world through the direct action or force. The carrier rarely changed the world through direct action or force. They changed the question through which the world interpreted itself. The archives described civilization as vast informational ecosystems. Every institution, economics, politics, religion, education, media, identity depended upon shared assumptions and interlocking narratives. None were inherently malicious. Each simply required continuity to function. Continuity, in turn, depended upon stable, repeatable stories about reality. The carrier introduced, it's like something's trying to come through as I'm reading that, but I can't. It's like it just stops me and I go blank for a second. That's so interesting to me. Huh. So I'm going to read that again. Continuity, in turn, depended upon stable, repeatable stories about reality. The carrier introduced information that existing narratives could not easily absorb without significant revision. Some institutions adapted gracefully, integrating the new data and evolving. Others resisted fiercely, attempting to reinterpret, dilute, or suppress it. The greatest instability occurred not because the carrier attacked the system, but because the system desperately tried to force the living transmission back into familiar, comfortable language. Compression became distortion. Distortion became conflict. Conflict became the raw material of history. Oh, wait a minute. What happened there? Ugh. Bear with me. There we go. Conflict became the raw material of history. For this reason, the oldest and wisest civilizations established an unusual, almost counterintuitive law regarding carriers. Never suppress a carrier. Never worship one. Both actions destroy the transmission. Suppression replaces open observation with fear and secrecy. Worship replaces observation with certainty, ritual, and projection. In either case, the signal disappears beneath layers of human distortion. The carrier was never meant to become an authority figure or a focal point of devotion. Only a receiver, a clear channel through which something larger could flow. The oldest records also warned of another persistent danger: false carriers. Every civilization produced them in abundance. Individuals who mistook their own vivid imagination for the transmission, who confused personal certainty for genuine coherence, who traded charisma for clarity and influence for understanding. They accumulated followers instead of refining observations. They defended fixed conclusions instead of remaining open to refinement. They announced themselves loudly, built movements, and sought legacy. True carriers almost never did any of these things. They built organically. Some recognized their gift, and through the help of others that also recognized it, they were allowed to develop it. Their attention always remained fixed upon the transmission rather than their own reflection in the eyes of others. The archives offered one practical, detestable distinction. The false carriers always demanded belief. The genuine carrier simply invited observation. As civilizations matured and approached technological and philosophical maturity, They eventually discovered the final paradox at the heart of the phenomenon. The transmission did not choose the carrier. The carrier did not earn or win the transmission. Instead, the carrier became transparent enough through circumstance, discipline, suffering, wonder, or simple, persistent openness for the transmission to pass through without excessive without excessive interference. Nothing had been granted from above. Nothing had been bestowed as a cosmic reward. No promotion or election had occurred. The individual had simply ceased introducing unnecessary distortion, like a pane of glass cleaned of dust and smudges, finally allowing light to pass through undistorted. In the deepest chamber of the great archive, preserved across millions of light years and countless civilizations, lay a final warning addressed to every society approaching technological and informational maturity. It was not written as mystical prophecy or religious scripture. It was written in the cool, precise language of systems engineering. The greatest threat to any closed system is not external invasion or catastrophe. It is the quiet emergence of individuals whose perception is no longer determined by the system itself, not because they seek destruction, not because they are superior, but because coherent information flowing cleanly, naturally, reorganizes incoherent structures around it. The old architectures resist perceiving threat. The new architectures emerge perceiving possibility. Neither side fully understands what they are participating in the same underlying process. One calls it instability and collapse. The other calls it awakening, remembrance, and understanding. The final page contained no names, no heroes, no chosen people, no promised salvation or utopian endpoint, only a single notation, repeated like a refrain throughout the records of civilizations separated by millions of light years and unimaginable gulfs of time. The transmission continues. The carriers remain among you. Stay open. Listen. Jason. I really do feel like that's true. And the older I get, the more I know. And my own guidance has said many, many, many times, you don't know what you don't know. And I've come to feel that a lot of what I think I know may be incorrect. And it's best to just be and see what develops. So, wow. I think that's going to be it for today. These two are all I think I can handle because I'm feeling something trying to come in. So until we meet again, my friends, be well.